I'm Madison Parker, 34, and I grew up as the girl nobody wanted around in our coastal town of Bayview. 10 years ago, I stood outside the fence of Seashore Haven Resort, watching the popular kids celebrate Senior Beach Week without me. The tears I shed that day watered the seeds of my determination. Now, I own that very resort, and I've just sent special invitations to my former bullies for a reunion they'll never forget. If you're watching this, drop a comment telling me where you're viewing from and hit that like and subscribe button to see how the ultimate revenge of success unfolds when the excluded becomes the host. Growing up in Bayview, Maine wasn't the picturesque coastal childhood most people imagine. While tourists saw pristine beaches and charming shops, I saw invisible lines dividing the haves from the have-nots. My family belonged firmly in the latter category. My father worked as a maintenance man at various hotels, while my mother cleaned houses for the wealthy families who controlled our town. We lived in a small, weathered house on the wrong side of town, far from the ocean views and gated communities. In Bayview, your last name determined your place, and Parker wasn't one that opened doors. From elementary school, I learned what it meant to be an outsider. My secondhand clothes and free lunch status marked me clearly as different. I tried to compensate by excelling academically, but that only seemed to make things worse. The wealthy kids didn't appreciate being outperformed by the maintenance man's daughter. By high school, the social hierarchy was firmly established, ruled by a core group of elites whose parents owned the businesses, properties, and influence in town. At the top of this pyramid stood Rebecca Thompson, daughter of the bank president, who held half the mortgages in Bayview. Rebecca had perfect blonde hair, designer clothes, and a cruelty that could cut deeper than any knife. She wasn't just popular, she was powerful. She decided who belonged and who didn't. Then there was Tyler James, Rebecca's boyfriend and star quarterback. Unlike the others, Tyler occasionally showed kindness when his girlfriend wasn't watching. Once, he helped me pick up my books after Rebecca's accidental shoulder bump sent them flying across the hallway. His quick whispered, "Sorry," meant more than he knew. Amber Davis followed Rebecca everywhere like a shadow, amplifying her friend's power through rumor and gossip. She was the one who started the rumor that my mother stole jewelry from the houses she cleaned, making our already difficult financial situation even worse when several clients let her go without explanation. Jackson Foster swaggered through school with the confidence of old money. His family owned Seashore Haven Resort, the crown jewel of Bayview's tourism industry. The exclusive beachfront property hosted celebrities and politicians during summer months. During school year, it became the venue for every important social event. Jackson never failed to mention that my father had applied for a maintenance position there and been rejected for not fitting the resort's image. Perhaps most painful was Sophia Wilson. We'd been friends in elementary school before social awareness set in. I still remembered braiding her hair during sleepovers and sharing secret dreams under blanket forts. By 9th grade, she'd chosen Rebecca's friendship over mine, abandoning me without explanation. Sometimes I caught her looking at me with what seemed like regret, but she never approached me again. The exclusion culminated during our senior year. For decades, Bayview High's graduation tradition included a week-long celebration at Seashore Haven Resort. The Senior Beach Week was legendary, a final bonding experience before everyone departed for college. Parents paid thousands for their children to enjoy luxury accommodations, private beach access, and specially organized events. I saved for months from my after-school job at the local grocery store, hoping to afford the discounted rate offered to locals. The day I brought my deposit check to school, I overheard Rebecca in the bathroom. "Can you imagine if Madison Parker actually showed up at Senior Beach Week? God, it would ruin everything. Jackson's dad already promised we could decide who gets to come." Her laughter echoed against the tile walls. "I already told the planning committee she's not approved. We'll return her check if she's stupid enough to submit one." I stood frozen in the stall, check burning in my pocket, tears threatening to spill. But I didn't give them the satisfaction of seeing me cry. Instead, I tore up the check and flushed it down the toilet. But curiosity and masochism led me to the resort on the first night of the celebration. I stood outside the ornate iron fence, watching my classmates laugh and dance at the beach bonfire. Music and happiness floated over the barrier, a world I couldn't access. Tyler spotted me from a distance, his expression unreadable before Rebecca pulled him back into the crowd. That night, as I walked home along the darkened beach road, I made a promise to myself. Someday, I would be the one inside the fence. Someday, they would regret making me feel small. I didn't know how, but I knew my future wouldn't be confined to the limitations Bayview had placed on me. The day after graduation, I left Bayview with $200, a duffel bag of clothes, and an acceptance letter to the state university with a partial academic scholarship. I'd applied in secret, knowing my parents expected me to stay and find local work. They didn't understand my desperate need to escape, but they drove me to the bus station anyway, fear and pride mingling in their eyes. College was a revelation and a struggle. For the first time, no one knew me as the poor girl from the wrong side of town, but freedom came with its own price tag. My scholarship covered tuition, but nothing else. I worked 3 jobs simultaneously: morning shifts at a coffee shop, evening waitressing, and weekend retail. I slept 4 hours a night and studied in every spare moment. My roommates partied while I worked, dated while I studied, and traveled during breaks while I picked up extra shifts. During my sophomore year, I took a business management class that changed everything. The professor, Elizabeth Chen, noticed my exhaustion but also my determination. After I aced her impossibly difficult midterm, she called me to her office. "You have a gift for business strategy," she said, studying me over her glasses. "But you're burning yourself out." I explained my situation, expecting the usual platitudes about perseverance. Instead, she offered me a research assistant position that paid better than all my part-time jobs combined, with flexible hours that worked around my classes. "Someone invested in me once," she explained. "Now I'm investing in you." Under Elizabeth's mentorship, I discovered my passion for hospitality management. Her connections helped me secure an internship at a boutique hotel group during my junior year. I absorbed everything like a sponge: operations, marketing, customer psychology, profit margins, brand positioning. The internship led to a job offer upon graduation. My first venture into entrepreneurship came 3 years after college. With Elizabeth's encouragement and a small business loan, I opened a bed and breakfast in a college town 2 hours from campus. I poured everything into renovating the Victorian house, creating the perfect guest experience, and marketing to visiting parents and alumni. 6 months in, a major plumbing disaster coincided with a recession that decimated tourism. I lost everything, including my confidence. For weeks, I couldn't get out of bed, feeling like a failure who had proven everyone in Bayview right. Elizabeth appeared at my apartment door one rainy Tuesday. "Get dressed," she said. "You're coming to work with me." She had accepted a position as operations director for a mid-sized hotel chain and created a management trainee position for me. "Your business didn't fail because you lacked talent," she insisted. "It failed because you lacked experience and capital. Now you'll get both." The next 5 years were a blur of 17-hour days, relocations to troubled properties that needed turning around, and crash courses in every aspect of hotel management. I developed a reputation as the person who could transform struggling properties into profitable ones. My salary increased, and I lived frugally, saving every penny while watching the market for opportunities. My break came when a small, underperforming hotel in Cape Cod went up for sale. The property had good bones, but terrible management. I leveraged my savings, excellent credit, and a business plan that impressed investors to secure financing. Within 18 months, I had doubled occupancy rates and tripled revenue. I sold it for a substantial profit and used the money to acquire 2 more struggling properties. By year 8 after leaving Bayview, I had established Parker Hospitality Group, with a portfolio of 7 boutique hotels across New England. Each property reflected my philosophy of accessible luxury, creating spaces where every guest felt valued, regardless of their background. My company developed a reputation for transforming neglected properties into destination experiences that maintained their unique character while delivering exceptional service. I rarely thought about Bayview anymore. My parents had retired to Florida with my financial help, severing my last connection to the town. But one morning, scanning industry news, a familiar name caught my eye. Seashore Haven Resort was for sale. Jackson Foster's father had apparently mismanaged the once prestigious property into near bankruptcy, unable to compete with newer luxury resorts that had opened along the coast. The article featured a quote from Jackson, now the resort's manager. "We're confident the right buyer will appreciate Seashore Haven's legacy and tradition of exclusivity." Exclusivity, the word that had kept me outside the fence 10 years ago. I closed my laptop and tried to focus on other work, but the possibility nagged at me. What would it mean to own the very symbol of my exclusion? Was it a business opportunity, or just a chance to settle an old score? I requested the prospectus out of what I told myself was professional curiosity. When it arrived, I recognized a diamond buried in financial mismanagement. With the right vision and operational changes, Seashore Haven could be transformed. The decision to pursue it became simultaneously the most professional and personal choice of my career. "This acquisition doesn't align with your usual strategy," my financial advisor warned during our meeting. "The asking price is inflated, renovation costs will be substantial, and the location is seasonal at best." "I see potential where others don't," I replied, not mentioning my personal connection. "The property has historical significance and name recognition. With proper positioning and year-round programming, we can extend the season and attract a more diverse clientele." My team prepared a detailed offer significantly below asking price, expecting a negotiation process. Instead, we received an immediate counteroffer and request for a meeting. Apparently, the Fosters were more desperate than they appeared. 2 weeks later, I walked into the conference room of a Portland law firm to finalize negotiations. Jackson's father, William Foster, looked older than his years, the strain of financial troubles evident in the new lines on his face. Jackson sat beside him, his once confident posture now defensive. Neither recognized me. Why would they? The Madison Parker they remembered didn't wear tailored suits or arrive with a team of lawyers and architects. She didn't have the confidence to maintain eye contact or the authority to negotiate millions of dollars in real estate transactions. "Your offer is still below what this property is worth," William insisted, though we all knew the resort had been declining for years. "My offer reflects what the property is currently worth," I corrected. "Not what it was worth in its heyday or what it could be worth after significant investment, which I'm prepared to make." Jackson leaned forward. "Seashore Haven isn't just a hotel. It's an institution with a legacy of catering to a certain clientele." I smiled. "Yes, I'm familiar with its exclusivity. That's actually part of what needs to change." The negotiation continued for hours. By the end, I had secured the property for 20% below the original asking price, with contingencies that protected my investment if additional structural issues were discovered. When we signed the final paperwork, I used my full name, Madison Eleanor Parker. A flicker of recognition crossed Jackson's face, quickly replaced by confusion. I maintained a professional smile, neither confirming nor denying his suspicion. Let him wonder. The next day, I walked through my new acquisition, alone. Seashore Haven had declined visibly since my high school days. The once immaculate gardens were overgrown, paint peeled from the elegant columns, and the famous infinity pool contained more leaves than water. Yet beneath the neglect, I could see the bones of something magnificent. Standing on the private beach, I found myself exactly where I had stood a decade ago, Only now I was on the other side of the fence. The emotional impact caught me by surprise. I had expected triumph, perhaps even smugness. Instead, I felt a complex mixture of vindication, sadness, and responsibility. In my hotel office the following week, I outlined my vision for the property to my design and operations team. We'll respect the historical architecture, but modernize everything else. The exclusivity ends now. I want to create spaces that welcome rather than intimidate. My head designer raised an eyebrow. This seems personal for you. All my projects are personal, I deflected. That's why they succeed. As the renovation plans progressed, I found myself drawn to the resort's archives. Decades of guest records were stored in a neglected office, including files from the infamous Senior Beach Week. I told myself I was researching the property's history, but really, I was searching for something specific. I found it in a dusty folder from 10 years ago, a complete guest list and contact information for my graduating class. I stared at the names, surprised by the emotions they still evoked. Rebecca, Tyler, Amber, Jackson, Sophia. The architects of my high school misery and inadvertent catalysts for my ambition. That night in my hotel room, I made an impulsive decision. The resort's grand reopening would coincide with what would have been our 10-year high school reunion. And the guest list would start with those 5 names. My marketing director was puzzled by my specific requirements for the invitations. These need to hint at luxury without revealing the new ownership, I explained. I want the recipients to be curious enough to accept without knowing exactly what they're accepting. The invitations promised an all-expenses-paid luxury weekend at the newly renovated Seashore Haven Resort, exclusively offered to select Bayview High alumni to celebrate their achievements since graduation. I personally signed each one with the title, Owner Seashore Haven Resort, but without my name. As I dropped the envelopes into the mail, I questioned my motives. Was this about healing old wounds or creating new ones? Was I planning a reconciliation or revenge? The line between the two felt increasingly blurry, but it was too late to turn back. The invitations were sent, and the stage was set for a reunion none of us would forget. The responses arrived more quickly than I anticipated. Rebecca was the first to RSVP, her enthusiastic acceptance noting that she wouldn't miss the opportunity to experience the legendary resort's transformation. Her email signature identified her as a real estate agent specializing in luxury properties. Tyler's response was more measured, a simple confirmation without elaboration. His social media revealed he had become a high school football coach in a neighboring town, never having made it to the NFL as everyone had predicted. Amber's acceptance came with effusive thanks and multiple exclamation points. She was now a public relations specialist for a cosmetics company, according to her professional profile. Jackson didn't respond initially. I hadn't expected him to, given his family's humiliation at selling the property. But 3 days before the deadline, his curt acceptance arrived, listing his occupation as hospitality consultant. Sophia's response affected me most. Her acceptance was polite, but contained a note. I've often thought about reconnecting with old classmates and making amends where needed. This seems like the perfect opportunity. She was now a school counselor, working with at-risk youth. Each confirmation triggered specific memories. Rebecca orchestrating my humiliation at junior prom, announcing to everyone that my dress came from a thrift store. Amber spreading rumors that I cheated on tests because someone from my background couldn't possibly be that smart. Jackson throwing a party and making sure everyone knew I wasn't welcome in his home. But also, Tyler secretly sharing his class notes when I missed school for a week after my grandmother died. Sophia's momentary hesitations before joining in with Rebecca's cruelty, as though some part of her remembered our friendship. The resort renovation proceeded at an aggressive pace. I was on site daily, overseeing every detail with a meticulousness That surprised even my experienced team. The original architecture was preserved and enhanced, while interiors were completely modernized. I insisted on accessibility features throughout the property, determined that no one would ever feel excluded. One evening, my design director found me in what would become the main dining room, adjusting the seating chart for the reunion dinner for the 20th time. "You know," she said casually, "most owners don't personally arrange dinner seating or select specific room assignments for guests." I looked up from the table map. "These aren't just any guests. Clearly." She studied me for a moment. "Madison, I've worked with you for 5 years, and I've never seen you this invested in the details. What's really happening here?" I hesitated, then admitted, "These people excluded me from this very resort when we were teenagers. I was the poor girl, the outsider they didn't want contaminating their special week." Understanding dawned on her face. "And now you own the place. That's some poetic justice." "It should be," I agreed. "So why doesn't it feel as satisfying as I imagined?" "Because revenge rarely delivers what it promises," she suggested gently. "What exactly are you hoping to achieve with this reunion?" I couldn't answer immediately. The truth was complicated. Yes, I wanted them to see my success. Yes, I wanted them to feel a fraction of the discomfort I'd felt. But beyond that, I want them to recognize what they did, I finally said. How it affected me. And maybe, just maybe, I want them to regret it. "Will that heal what happened to you?" "It's not about healing," I insisted. "It's about justice, balance, showing them that their actions had consequences they never considered." She nodded, unconvinced. "Just be careful you don't become what you resented." Her words haunted me as preparations continued. I found myself making increasingly specific decisions about each guest's experience. Rebecca would be assigned the blue suite because she had once mocked my blue backpack as garbage bag chic. Jackson would receive the smallest of the luxury rooms, though it was still more opulent than most hotel accommodations. I personally selected the welcome amenities for each room. Tyler would find local craft beer, his favorite in high school. Sophia would receive a bracelet similar to one we had shared as children. These touches weren't meant as olive branches, but as subtle messages. I remember everything. The staff was trained to provide impeccable service without revealing the owner's identity. "The owner will make herself known at the appropriate time," I instructed the manager. "Until then, simply refer to the ownership as Parker Hospitality Group." As the week of the reunion approached, my anxiety increased proportionally. I rehearsed what I would say, how I would reveal myself, what expression I would maintain when they recognized me. I selected my wardrobe with painful precision, sophisticated without trying too hard, successful without being showy. The night before their arrival, I couldn't sleep. I stood on the private beach at midnight, watching waves crash against the shore. The fence that once kept me out had been replaced with an elegant path welcoming guests to the waterfront. I had literally and figuratively torn down the barriers that excluded me. So why did I still feel like that girl standing outside, looking in? Dawn broke with perfect weather, as though nature approved of my long-awaited reckoning. I watched from my private office as the first car arrived. Rebecca stepped out, sunglasses perched on her head, looking remarkably similar to her high school self, though with more polish and confidence. The years had been kind to her. One by one they arrived, these people who had once defined my social existence. From my hidden vantage point, I observed their reactions to the transformed resort, noting their impressed expressions and excitement. None of them looked like villains. They looked like ordinary people arriving for a pleasant weekend. For a moment, I questioned everything. Was I overreacting to teenage behavior? Was this elaborate plan the act of someone who hadn't actually moved on? But then Rebecca's laugh floated up from the lobby. That same laugh I'd heard through the bathroom stall, and my resolve hardened. Some lessons needed to be taught, and I had waited 10 years to deliver this one. From my office window, I watched my past arrive in luxury vehicles. Rebecca emerged from a white Mercedes convertible, designer sunglasses perched on her expertly highlighted hair. She paused dramatically before the restored facade of Seashore Haven, her calculated pose suggesting she was mentally photographing herself for social media. Some things never changed. Tyler arrived in a modest SUV, athletic build still evident beneath his casual button-down shirt. He carried his own weekend bag, declining the bellhop's assistance with a friendly smile. He stood in the driveway for an extra moment, taking in the ocean view with what appeared to be genuine appreciation. Amber practically bounced from her rideshare, chattering excitedly to the driver before tipping generously, a performance of bubbly generosity. Her professional polish couldn't quite conceal the girl who had once perfected the art of performing for an audience. Jackson arrived last, his reluctance evident in his tight expression and defensive posture. He surveyed his family's former property with barely concealed resentment, flinching slightly when a staff member welcomed him to Seashore Haven. Sophia was already in the lobby when I checked the security feed. She had arrived early, sitting quietly in a corner with a book, occasionally glancing up as though gauging whether she belonged in such luxurious surroundings. The uncertainty in her expression stirred unwelcome empathy. The welcome reception began at 6 in the oceanfront lounge. Through discreetly positioned cameras, I observed my former classmates gravitating toward each other, exclaiming over the transformation of the resort and their own life developments. The open bar loosened inhibitions, and soon they were reminiscing about high school with selective nostalgia. "Remember senior beach week?" Rebecca laughed, raising her champagne flute. "Best week of high school, hands down." "Foster, your family knew how to run this place back then," Amber added, turning to Jackson, "though I have to admit, whoever bought it has exceptional taste. Everything is gorgeous." Jackson's smile didn't reach his eyes. The new owner clearly had capital my father didn't. Easy to create luxury with unlimited funds. "I wonder who bought it," Tyler mused, looking around. The invitation was intriguing but vague. "Probably some investment group," Rebecca dismissed. "Though I'd love to meet them. I could totally help them market properties like this." Their conversation drifted to careers and accomplishments, each subtly competing to appear most successful. Rebecca boasted about selling multi-million-dollar properties. Amber dropped names of celebrities she'd worked with. Jackson vaguely referenced consulting for international hotel brands, though his designer watch looked suspiciously like a knockoff. Only Tyler and Sophia seemed comfortable with their less glamorous careers. Tyler spoke genuinely about coaching, high school football, and teaching history. Sophia described her work with troubled teens with quiet passion. "Sometimes the kids just need someone who sees them," she explained. "Someone who remembers what it feels like to be excluded or overlooked." Her words sent an unexpected pang through me as I watched from my hidden vantage point. Was it possible Sophia had learned from our past? At 7:30, the group was escorted to the private dining room I'd personally designed for this moment. The circular table eliminated power positions, forcing equality among the guests. The lighting was calibrated to flatter but also reveal every expression. Behind my chair, floor-to-ceiling windows showcased the ocean view they had once enjoyed, without me. I took a deep breath and checked my appearance one final time. My navy blue dress was elegantly simple, my makeup understated but flawless. I wore no jewelry except small diamond earrings, success without ostentation. My once unruly hair was now smoothly styled, my posture trained by years of business meetings. I looked nothing like the girl they remembered, yet completely myself. The maitre d' announced dinner was served, and the group settled into their assigned seats, leaving the head chair conspicuously empty. As planned, the first course was served, conversation flowing with the premium wine. The mysterious host is certainly making us wait, Rebecca commented, impatience thinly veiled beneath. Humor, that was my cue. I nodded to the staff member positioned by the door and walked in as he announced, "Ladies and gentlemen, your host for the evening and the owner of Seashore Haven Resort, Ms. Madison Parker." The reaction was everything I had imagined during countless mental rehearsals. Rebecca froze with her wine glass halfway to her lips. Amber's mouth formed a perfect O of shock. Jackson's face flushed deep red. Tyler's eyebrows shot up before his expression settled into something unreadable. And Sophia. Sophia simply closed her eyes briefly, as though confirming something she had suspected. I smiled with practiced warmth that didn't quite reach my eyes. "Welcome to my resort. It's been a long time." The silence stretched uncomfortably until Rebecca recovered, social training overriding shock. "Madison, what an amazing surprise." "You look fantastic. Who would have thought little Madison Parker would end up owning Seashore Haven?" Her tone carried just enough condescension beneath the fake enthusiasm to fuel my resolve. This was exactly why I had planned this moment. "Not anyone from Bayview High, certainly," I replied pleasantly, taking my seat. "Please, enjoy your dinner. We have so much to catch up on." What followed was a masterclass in subtle power dynamics. I shared the story of my success without acknowledging our shared past, watching them mentally recalibrate their perception of me with each new revelation. I asked pointed questions about their lives, noting the exaggerations and omissions, the attempts to impress. As dessert was served, I finally addressed the elephant in the room. "I imagine you're wondering why I specifically invited you five to the soft opening of my resort." They exchanged glances, discomfort evident. Rebecca attempted to maintain control. "Well, we were the original Seashore Haven crowd, weren't we? It makes perfect marketing sense." "Actually," I said, my voice cool and controlled, "you were the crowd that made sure I couldn't be part of Seashore Haven. That's why you're here." The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. Tyler set down his fork. Sophia studied her plate. Jackson shifted uncomfortably. Amber's professional smile faltered. Only Rebecca attempted damage control. High school was so long ago, Madison. We were all immature then. Look at you now. Clearly everything worked out wonderfully. "Yes," I agreed, meeting her gaze directly. "Everything did work out. But not because of high school, in spite of it." With that, I stood and invited them to join me for a private tour of the resort, leaving them to digest more than just their dessert. The tour began in uncomfortable silence, 5 former tormentors following their once-excluded classmate through hallways of luxury. I pointed out architectural features and design elements with professional detachment, allowing the contrast between my current authority and former exclusion to speak for itself. In the grand ballroom, Rebecca sidled up beside me, voice lowered conspiratorially. "This place is absolutely fabulous, Madison. You've done amazing work. We should grab coffee, just us girls, and catch up properly. I'm in real estate now, and I could definitely send some valuable clients your way." Her transparent attempt to establish a false camaraderie, to rewrite our history into something mutually beneficial, ignited something in me. The carefully scripted remarks I'd prepared evaporated, replaced by raw honesty. "Rebecca," I said quietly, "do you remember telling everyone my dress was from Goodwill at junior prom?" Her perfect smile faltered. "I'm sure I never—" "You did. You also organized a table change when I was assigned to sit with your friends at lunch. You told Jackson's father not to hire my dad because our family wasn't resort material. And you made absolutely certain I couldn't attend senior beach week, even though I'd saved for months to afford it." Color drained from her face. "Madison, we were teenagers. Everyone does stupid things as teenagers." "Not everyone," I corrected. "Not systematically, not cruelly." I turned to include the others. "Not everyone makes a sport of exclusion." Jackson stepped forward, defensive. "If we're reopening ancient history, Let's acknowledge you weren't excluded because you were poor. You were excluded because you made everyone uncomfortable with your obvious resentment and chip on your shoulder." His words stung with their partial truth. I had worn my insecurity visibly, making it easier for them to justify their treatment. "Jackson," I replied evenly, "your family lost this resort because of mismanagement and failure to adapt. My chip on my shoulder built a successful hospitality group that could afford to buy and restore what your family squandered. Maybe some chips are worth carrying." His face reddened, but before he could respond, Amber intervened. "Madison," she said, surprising me with apparent sincerity, "you're right. What we did was wrong. I've thought about it often, especially when I see similar behavior in professional settings now. I can't change the past, but I am genuinely sorry for my part in it." Her unexpected apology knocked me off balance. This wasn't in my script of righteous confrontation. Tyler spoke next, his voice quiet but firm. "I should have done more. I knew the exclusion was happening, and while I didn't actively participate, my silence made me complicit. For what it's worth, I admired how you handled everything back then with dignity. Clearly, that strength served you well." I wasn't prepared for accountability or admiration. My carefully constructed narrative of villains and victim began cracking at the edges. Sophia finally met my eyes directly. "I've wanted to apologize for years, Madison. I abandoned our friendship because I was terrified of being on the outside. With you, it was cowardice, plain and simple." Her voice broke slightly. "In my work now with teenagers, I see the same patterns we perpetuated, and I try to break them. Your success is well-deserved, but our behavior was never justified, no matter how things turned out for you." The sincerity in her voice reached past my armor to touch the wounded teenager still living somewhere inside me. I turned away, momentarily overwhelmed by conflicting emotions. We had reached the beachfront patio where, 10 years ago, I had watched from outside the fence as my classmates celebrated without me. The symbolism wasn't lost on any of us. "When I bought this resort," I said, gathering myself, "I had a plan. I was going to invite you here, show you my success, make you uncomfortable, and then ask you to leave. I wanted you to feel a fraction of the exclusion I felt. I wanted revenge served on fine china in the very place you once kept me from entering." I turned to face them fully. I rehearsed this moment for months. The big reveal, the confrontation, your embarrassment, my triumph. But standing here now, I realized something unexpected. The ocean breeze caught my words as reality crystallized. Revenge doesn't heal old wounds. It just creates new ones. And success isn't really revenge at all. It's simply living well despite those who tried to limit you. Rebecca's perfect facade finally crumbled. "Is that why we're here? For you? To humiliate us?" "That was the original plan," I admitted. "But plans change. People change. Or at least, they can." In that moment, looking at their faces in the moonlight, I saw not the teenage tormentors who had defined my youth, but flawed adults carrying their own burdens. Rebecca's desperate maintenance of appearances, Jackson's failure to live up to his family legacy, Amber's performative personality, even Tyler and Sophia's regret. We were all still becoming ourselves, still working through the people we had been and the people we hoped to be. "I think," I said slowly, surprising myself, "that instead of ending this weekend, we should actually begin it. Properly this time. With honesty." The relief on some of their faces was palpable. The wariness on others suggested the journey wouldn't be simple. But something fundamental had shifted. In them. In me. In the space between us where our shared past resided. As we stood on the beach that had once symbolized my exclusion, I made a decision that the wounded teenager inside me would never have understood. I chose to transform this reunion from an act of revenge into something more powerful, an opportunity for healing. The remainder of the weekend unfolded differently than I had planned, evolving from orchestrated revenge to something more nuanced and ultimately more meaningful. Saturday morning, I arranged breakfast on the oceanfront terrace, the setting intentionally, informal and communal. "I've shown you who I've become," I said as we gathered around the table. "But I don't really know who any of you are now. Not the Instagram versions or the professional biographies. The real stories." There was hesitation initially, the vulnerability of honest sharing unfamiliar among people conditioned to impress rather than connect. But gradually, layers peeled away. Rebecca was the most surprising. Behind her polished exterior and forced enthusiasm lay a crumbling marriage to a controlling husband who monitored her social media presence and measured her worth by commission checks. "Everything has to look perfect," she admitted, voice uncharacteristically small. "The clothes, the car, the smile. If David sees anything that suggests I'm not succeeding, there are consequences." The bruise concealed beneath her bracelet suddenly made horrible sense. Her high school cruelty now contextualized as learned behavior from her own experiences of conditional acceptance. Jackson's arrogance dissolved when he confessed that his hospitality consulting was actually a mid-level management position at a budget hotel chain. "I grew up believing the foster name guaranteed success," he explained. "Watching my father lose everything was devastating. I keep pretending I'm following in his footsteps, but the truth is, I'm terrified of failure and have no idea how to succeed on my own merits." Amber's constant performance masked deep insecurity. "I've built a career on making others look good," she said. "I'm the person behind the scenes making sure everyone appears their best. Sometimes I wonder if anyone would value me if I wasn't useful that way." Tyler's story was quieter, but no less meaningful. After his football career ended with a college injury, he'd returned to Bayview questioning his identity and purpose. "Coaching gives me a chance to mentor kids differently than I was mentored," he explained, "to teach them that character matters more than status or achievement." Sophia shared how her work as a school counselor stemmed directly from our broken friendship. "I specialize in helping kids who are being bullied or excluded," she said, "partly because I understand the damage it causes, and partly as penance for my own failures of courage." As they shared their stories, I found myself listening with unexpected empathy. These weren't the two-dimensional villains of my revenge fantasy, but complex humans shaped by their own wounds and struggles. When my turn came, I shared not just my success story but the cost of it, the loneliness of single-minded ambition, the trust issues that had sabotaged relationships, the persistent fear that everything could disappear if I showed weakness. "I built this life to prove my worth," I admitted, "to show everyone who excluded me that I was someone who mattered. But sometimes I wonder if I've been so focused on proving myself that I've forgotten to actually live." That evening, I suggested something unplanned, a bonfire on the beach. As flames illuminated our faces, I distributed paper and pens. "Write down something you need to let go of," I suggested. "Something that's keeping you trapped in the past." In the flickering light, we each wrote our private burdens. When we finished, I went first, reading mine aloud before casting it into the flames. I released the need to be validated by those who once rejected me. One by one, they followed. Rebecca. I release the belief that my value comes from others' approval. Jackson. I release the pressure to be what my father wanted instead of discovering who I am. Amber. I release the habit of performing instead of being genuine. Tyler. I release the regret of silence when I should have spoken. Sophia. I release the guilt of choosing safety over friendship. As our written words turned to ash, something shifted in the atmosphere. Not forgiveness exactly. Some wounds were too deep for simple resolution. But perhaps understanding. Recognition of our shared humanity beyond the roles we had played in each other's stories. The next morning, as my former classmates prepared to depart, I made an announcement about the resort's future. Seashore Haven was built on exclusivity, I told them. But its new incarnation will be different. We're establishing a program that will bring underprivileged kids from Bayview and surrounding communities here for educational retreats. No one should feel there are places they don't belong because of their background. The initiative would be called No Fences, a name whose significance only those 5 would fully understand. As we said goodbye, each interaction held its own significance. Rebecca hugged me tightly, slipping me her personal number with a whispered request to call if I could help her find resources to leave her situation safely. I promised I would. Jackson shook my hand with newfound respect. You've done what my family never could, seen this place's potential beyond status and tradition. I might have resented you for it, but honestly, it's inspiring. Amber's goodbye was characteristically effusive, but with new authenticity. You've created something extraordinary here, Madison. Not just the resort, but this weekend. Thank you for the second chance none of us deserved. Tyler lingered, our conversation stretching beyond pleasantries. The connection between us had shifted from shared history to something potentially new. I'd like to bring my team here someday, he said, to show them what determination and vision can create. They'd be welcome, I replied, surprised to find I meant it. Sophia was last to leave, our goodbye the most emotionally charged. I've carried the guilt of betraying our friendship for 10 years, she said. I don't expect forgiveness, but I want you to know that the girl you were, smart, determined, authentic, she helped shape the woman I'm trying to be now. After they departed, I walked alone along the beach, past where the fence had once stood. The weekend had delivered something I hadn't expected, not the satisfaction of revenge, but the freedom of release. Success hadn't been my revenge, it had been my salvation. And sharing it, even with those who once excluded me, somehow made it more meaningful than hoarding it in bitterness. In the months that followed, Seashore Haven thrived under its new, inclusive vision. The No Fences program brought children to the resort who had never seen the ocean despite living miles away. Their joy in spaces once reserved for the privileged few became the property's new legacy. Rebecca eventually left her husband, staying briefly in one of my hotels while establishing her independence. Jackson enrolled in business courses, humbled, but determined to earn success rather than inherit it. Sophia and I cautiously rebuilt a friendship based on who we had become rather than who we had been. As for me, I discovered that true belonging isn't found in gaining access to exclusive spaces, but in creating inclusive ones. The wounded teenager who stood outside the fence had become a woman with the power to remove barriers entirely. The most meaningful revenge wasn't making others feel excluded, but ensuring no one else would feel the exclusion I had experienced. Have you ever held on to pain from your past, only to discover that releasing it was more empowering than any revenge? Could be. Share your story in the comments below. If this journey of transformation resonated with you, please hit the like button and subscribe for more stories about turning pain into purpose and exclusion into opportunity. Remember that success isn't about proving others wrong. It's about proving yourself right. Thank you for witnessing my journey from outsider to owner, from excluded to inclusive. May we all find the courage to tear down the fences that separate us from each other and from our best selves.